Okay. All glories to Mother Ratasha, all glories to the religion of love, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the Supreme Lord. O Lord God, please help us live out these teachings and be an example of love in the world. Jai. Okay. Today we're going to start from a new book, Desire. I, Rajak Khan, seeking knowledge, traveled to the capital of my country. In the assemblies of the elect, I sat and studied. And though the highest degrees I earned, and though the teachers were all learned men in many things, the knowledge I sought was not theirs to give, for I yearned to unlock eternity, to know the absolute truth of the mystery that is life and death. And so I went and wandered in this world in search of wisdom. And many I met who claimed to be master, but were soon found to be only paid performers in a theater of theory. They would say what they could not see, teaching to others beliefs they themselves could not be. And religion to me was as the entering of a tomb, for I found therein only corruption, death, and decay, dead rules, relics, rites, and rituals. And I, at last, cried out aloud to God alone, and God hearing, made a meeting with a master, she whom the people call the Angel of Bengal. And meeting, I met myself, and meeting myself, met my destiny. And meeting me, she asked of me, "Please tell to me your heart's desire." Then could I only answer with a single, simple word. "Knowledge is what I seek," I said. Although my words were few, she understood me well enough to tell this tale to me, of one who was the wisest man in all of ancient Greece, and how he once was also asked instruction in the mystery of life and death, and how, on hearing this, the master had set a test for the one who asked instruction in the mysteries of life and death, that he be taken to a nearby pool, where, held beneath the water, till he had thought that drowning he would surely die, there then arose in him such a strong desire, that with a power that he never knew he had, fighting free, he saved himself and lived. And still he asked instruction in the mysteries of life and death. Then did the master, the wisest one in all of ancient Greece, say this to him: "When your desire for knowledge is as strong as was your desire to live, only then will you be eligible for instruction in the mystery that is life and death." And the same she said to me, adding, "It is by our desires that we decide our destiny. And when you desire in life that which death does not destroy, come to me." And leaving everything, I went with her, and it was in my 32nd year that I was born into an eternal life of knowledge and bliss, becoming a servant of the servants of God, a pilgrim on the path made straight. And by the teachings was I transformed, yet the more I was changed, the more myself I became. All right, let's hear some commentary. Was someone trying to say something? Oh, Gesundheit.
What's up?
Hey, welcome. Okay, so,
I hope I'm not late.
what's that?
I hope I'm not late.
Oh, it's all right. You're just in time.
No, you're in time.
So, I, Rajak Khan, seeking knowledge, traveled to the capital of my country. In the assemblies of the elect I sat and studied. And though the highest degrees I earned, and though the teachers were all learned men in many things, the knowledge I sought was not theirs to give. So, universities, colleges, they have their place. Therefore, knowledge of this world, worldly knowledge. So worldly men, worldly institutions, worldly knowledge to get a worldly occupation and to make, money, usually, and support worldly life. And that's what these degrees, these honors, this knowledge that we can try to attain is for. Oh. Would y'all be so kind to mute your mics for just a wee tad, and then in about half an hour we're going to have a nice questions answers for them, and everyone can talk. Thank you so much. Much love. And I kind of relate with Rajak too, because he says, "The knowledge I sought was not theirs to give, for I yearned to unlock eternity, to know the absolute truth of the mystery that is life and death." And one thing that you don't get in these academic institutions is knowledge on the actual purpose of life, on what the actual way to make life perfect, how to be ultimately happy, how to be free from suffering, let alone knowledge of the true self, the spirit soul. This is not to be found in the universities of the world. And just like Rajak, I also got a little disillusioned, disenfranchised, and after my third year of university, I dropped out and sought knowledge elsewhere. I'm not saying you all drop out. I eventually did go back and finish my degree, got my master's even, when I found a purpose for it. But just saying. So I yearn to unlock eternity, to know the absolute truth of the mystery that is life and death. Yeah. And so I went and wandered in this world in search of wisdom. And many I met who claimed to be master, but were soon found to be only paid performers in a theater of theory. Yeah, people without realized knowledge do not have actual wisdom. Wisdom is knowledge that you've experienced for yourself, and it has become a part of your life. For example, knowledge may be like, I know that I think I can climb this mountain. And when you're at the top of the mountain, now you experience, I can climb this mountain. I have. And that's like wisdom. Wisdom is realized knowledge. Otherwise, knowledge is only secondhand. It's the knowledge of others, the knowledge of books. But when someone doesn't have realization of these spiritual teachings, the message of God, there's no potency behind their words. It doesn't have an effect to move your heart. Let alone the do as I say, not as I do practices which are common in the world. They don't exactly inspire us much, do they? And I was surprised, actually, that many, religious or holy men, they actually take salaries. They're paid to say what they're meant to say. So.
Hey, Brother Hassan.
Oh, hello, welcome. So glad you could join us. Would you be so kind to mute your microphone until the questions answer time? So kind of you. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you all are here. And they would say what they could not see, teaching to others beliefs they themselves could not be. And religion to me was as the entering of a tomb, for I found therein only corruption, death, and decay, dead rules, relics, rites, and rituals. And they are kind of dead, aren't they? A lot of people in many backgrounds, they practice their traditions, they practice their religions, but they don't even know what they're doing. They're just going through the motions. Well, this is what my father did, and this is what his father did. Da, 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 da. And the actual inner meaning of it has become lost and unlived. And there's a nice quote from the Bible. Jesus, he calls the Pharisees, who were like these men, paid performers in a theater of theory, who didn't actually live out the import of the scriptures, were not actually fully realized lovers of God. He called them whited sepulchres. A sepulcher is a tomb. That's like a nice marble tomb. Looks really pretty, it's like a nice building, but inside is rotting dead bones and flesh. And that's what he called them. Pretty on the outside, dead on the inside. And that's what religion has become, as far as we know it. It's become very glorified on the outside. All the pomp and circumstance, the big great buildings, the nice dress, the big hats. But the heart of God's message, that love, that surrender, and the kindness which proves that love, that we don't find too often. What we do find are dead rules, relics, rites, and rituals, for the most part. And I, at last, cried out aloud to God alone. So this is one of the devotees of God's qualities, is that they take on only God as their shelter. God is their only shelter in life. Because how often have we been let down by those we trust, by those we depended on, by a close family, close relatives, by society, by our religious leaders? How often we're so let down by everybody, and been betrayed, been backstabbed, been lied about, or just been disappointed, And at last, when the devotee of God in full surrender cries out to God alone, "O Lord, you are my only shelter. I surrender at your lotus feet." Because God is our truest well-wisher. God will never turn his back on us. God will never disappoint us, never let us down, never lie to us, never betray us. We have no greater friend, well-wisher, beloved, other than the Lord. And when the devotee of God, or prospective devotee, cries out aloud to God, and that desire is sincere, God, as it says, in hearing, made a meeting with a master, and for Rajakshi, whom the people call the Angel of Bengal. And meeting, I met myself. And meeting myself, met my destiny. The first milestone, you can say, or the goal in spiritual life would be self-realization. Aham Brahmasmi. I am not this body, I am spirit soul. So, the cornerstone foundation of all transcendental paths would be this, self-realization. Come to know who you truly are, your real self. Not who we think we are, the false identity, the false ego of the body, of this mind. Not the thoughts in the head, but the real us, the eternal us within this body, giving consciousness and life to this body. Who is the real us? And in meeting the spiritual master, do we begin upon the path back to our true self. And when we become self-realized, knowing by experience, again, not by theory, not by second-hand knowledge, but by actual experience of our own true self, as an eternal servitor of God, then we meet our true purpose, our grand destiny, which is the transcendental loving service of the Lord in a life of bliss, eternality, and knowledge. And meeting me, she asked of me, "Please tell to me your heart's desire." Then could I answer only with a single simple word, "Knowledge is what I seek." And if you remember, it said in the scriptures, in fact, I want to read from the quote from the Bhagavad Gita. It actually says, 4 kinds of pious men render devotional service unto the Lord: the distressed, the desire of wealth, the inquisitive, and he who is searching for knowledge of the Absolute. Of these the wise one who is in full knowledge in union with me through pure devotional service is the best, for I am very dear to him, and he is dear to me. So, Rajak came to this path yearning for knowledge. I again relate, this was also my own coming to spiritual life. I also thirsted for knowledge above all other things. And although my words were few, she understood me well enough to tell this tale to me, of one who was the wisest man in all of ancient Greece. And so, he was once asked instruction in the mystery of life and death. So, this young man came to him, and this wise man put a test before him. We talked about this in previous classes, but here it is finally in the book. So it takes him to a pool, dunks the student's head under the water, prospective student, and he's like, he starts fighting, struggling to get free, right? He's drowning, right? Imagine yourself in this situation. If you were your head under the water and you're gonna die. Oh my goodness, would this strength arise in you? It says, there then arose in him such a strong desire that with a power that he never knew he had, fighting free, he saved himself and lived. Right? Like the example of like the mother saving the child in an emergency, like all of a sudden in those emergency moments, the mother gets superhuman strength to lift the car up the child or something like that. Have you heard these stories? This actually happens. This single-pointed desire. Like the drowning young man, he has no greater desire than to live in that present moment. Nothing is on his mind except this. And there's nothing he desires except this. That's how strong it was, the desire to live, or the desire of the mother. There's nothing more important right now. It's life or death to save the child. And everything's put into it. All energy, all focus, all strength, all mind, everything's put into this one single-pointed desire. That is the type of sincerity. That is a type of strong desire that God demands of us. Or I should say, what actually draws us to God. It's said that by the grace of God, one gets a spiritual master. And by the grace of the spiritual master, one gets God. So when our desire is that strong enough, God will arrange a meeting with a devotee of God to offer instructions purely from the scriptures and set an example and guide one on the path made straight, the path by which we come again to God. It says here, when your desire for knowledge is as strong as was your desire to live, only then will you be eligible for instruction in the mystery that is life and death. Yeah, these are the great mysteries in life. The great questions of life. Who am I? Where did we come from? What are we doing here? Where are we going when we die? Who is God? What is God? What is our relationship with God? These aren't some little, weekend questions, hobby questions. No, these are the big questions. And what are you going to put into it to try and realize and discover this? Is it something you just, little hobby on the side, little side practice? Yeah, I do little spiritual stuff here and there, little meditation, I go, do a little this, do a little that, but I'm still into all these things. No. You got to be like someone like Rajak here, where he's so frustrated that he's crying to God. I cried out aloud to God alone. He's crying for God. That's the type of desire we need to bring ourselves, to make us eligible to come to this life of devotion. That's the type of desire. Not the wishy-washy desire, not something that's going to be shaken so easily. Like, God will be tested, as this master tests the young man. Oh, you really want to learn these great mysteries of life? Well, he tests, how bad does he really want to learn? How sincere is he? And thus the test. It makes me think of those montages or these parts of movies where you see like the poor kid, he wants to join the kung fu school, the Shaolin monastery, and there he's rejected, so he just sits there, poor kid, every single day waiting outside the monastery to be let in, and every day they say go away, and the kid never leaves, and he's there in the cold and the rain, hungry, thirsty, but he doesn't want anything stronger. And then eventually they have compassion on him, they see his sincerity, they open the door, they let him in and become a student. I'm sure we've all seen a movie like that before, right? So this is the type of sincerity we need, and that's actually the type of strong desire and commitment we need to have if we're going to be successful on the path of spiritual realization. If you wish to be self-realized, liberated from material contamination, to be enlightened, that's going to take nothing less but your all. You got to put everything into it. You got to really want this greater than everything in life, because there will be many tests along the path. Many. And unfortunately, for most, when the boat gets rocky, when those tests come upon them, they jump ship, they bail. They abandon ship. Oh, this is too much for me. I go back. Let me go do some other stuff instead. I've seen it happen. Mother Atansha, she taught us we need to have like laser, single-pointed focus if we're going to really be successful in spiritual life. It said elsewhere in the book, it's the devotee's ability to control himself by himself that'll make him successful in serving God. You got to be strong. You got to be a warrior. Mother Atasha also said to us, spiritual life is not for sissies. It's for warriors. And we're not talking about warriors, with fisticuffs and guns and swords. We're talking about inner warriors, inner strength. Strength that nothing and no one will stand in the way of you loving God. Nothing can shake you from this path. Nothing can disturb you from desiring knowledge of the absolute truth, realizing that knowledge for yourself, becoming again the lover of God. You got to be strong. And the test of your strength is your desire. How strong is your desire? That's what it all starts with, actually. It all starts with desire. Nothing in heaven or on earth begins without desire. Everything begins with desire. And the same she said to me, adding, and this one sentence so profound, it is by our desires that we decide our destiny. By our desires we decide our destiny. People ponder the questions, is our life fated to be? We have no choice, we're just going through the motions, or do we choose our own path? Do we create our own destiny, our own fate? Here's the answer. Yes, we create it. And how do we do so? By our desires. And it's very easy to understand. Someone who desires money, desires to be rich, well, they're going to go down a path that leads them towards that. Someone who desires, family, lots of kids, a nice partner, well, they're going to be doing a lot of actions and activities and put themselves in scenarios to meet someone and have kids. They're going to be guided that direction, for example. And for someone who desires God, spiritual realization, spiritual knowledge, well, they will be like what y'all are doing, seeking the company of devotees, reading the holy books, seeking knowledge. By our desires, we decide our destiny. If you want to know what your future holds, we need only take a real good analysis of what are the desires in our hearts and mind. And whatever desires are strongest, that's most likely to manifest sooner or later. But of all those desires, anything of this world that we may desire, wealth, family, position, prestige, name and fame, all of that is destroyed at the moment of death. All of it. Howard Hughes was one of the richest men of his time, and when he died, all these reporters clamored together in a press conference, bickering and thinking, like, how much did he leave? Oh, how much? And then one smart aleck in the back goes, all of it. It didn't matter how much money he had. It was all gone at the moment of death. Doesn't matter what position or prestige or, what fame we have. It's all gone at the moment of death. All of that's lost to us. Everything in this world is subject to a decrease, a decay, a death. The spiritual master says, when you desire in life that which death does not destroy, then come to me. When you desire the eternal, when you desire knowledge of the ecstatic, spiritual, when you desire the experience of love of God, our eternal nature of the spirit soul, and that desire is greater than any other desire. It's greater than life itself. Like you can't live without it. It's like air. You can't breathe without this. Then we will be eligible. And then may God arrange a meeting. As it said, time and time again, when the student is ready, the master will appear. And here we have a little bit of a qualitative background of the readiness of the student, the sincerity of the prospective disciple. And leaving everything, I went with her. And it was in my 32nd year that I was born into an eternal life of knowledge and bliss, becoming a servant of the servants of God, a pilgrim on the path made straight. And by the teachings was I transformed. Yet the more I was changed, the more myself I became. Remember, self-realization. How is that accomplished? By removing all of the covering, all of the illusion, the ignorance that clouds our minds and our hearts, that keeps us from experiencing our true, eternal, natural state, which is of love, which is of bliss and knowledge, consciousness, presence. So the more you progress upon a spiritual path, engage in the purifying practices of religion, devotional service, hearing, chanting, remembering, etc., the more are our hearts and minds purified, more they are cleansed. And it's like, I've used the analogy of a light bulb caked on with mud. The light's on, but you don't see it. You got to remove all that cake off, remove the dirt.
Why is Jester duplicating himself?
Yeah, I was going to ask too.
So, all you need to do is cleanse away the dirt for that light to shine. And the closer we get to our natural state, the less we are covered with illusion, the more our natural self starts to come through. And we change. See, in spiritual life, we don't say stagnant. In spiritual life, we are constantly changing, constantly evolving. We don't just stay in the same place or, never grow. No, there's always more to love. There's always more to learn. We're always purifying. And the closer we get to that state of love, there's going to be changes. There'll be signs manifest in you. There'll be qualities of a devotee that will become realized and will become a part of you. And the more you change, as people will say, you've changed a lot. Oh my gosh, I too have changed so much. But really, we're just the devotees. We're changing into our real self. We're becoming again our true self, the beloved lover, the servant of God. And that begins with our desires. So, okay, let me pause it there. One sec. All right. So, does anyone have any questions related to today's class, first off?
Yeah, I'm trying to be serious, and Jester's duplicating himself. This is not funny.
Yeah, it's not funny.
Well, don't mind none of that. Well, try not to be distracted. These are, again, remember, there's going to be many tests. Many tests in
you're
spiritual
right,
life.
You're
Probably
right.
just one of those
That's
tests.
not right.
So, aside from the many distractions and disturbances which may dilute our attention and our focus on spiritual life, does anyone have any question about desire or the beginning of this part of the book?
Yeah, is it good to have a balance of desire, or do you have to completely renounce everything at some point?
Okay. You're talking about desire for things of the world and then also desire for God and for the spiritual?
Yeah, because the guy who was drowning, he was fighting with all of his life towards one thing. He wasn't thinking about what he wanted for dinner, while he's drowning.
That's true. So, I wish I could put it in like some type of meter scale or something, like you talked about a multimeter earlier. The desire for God needs to be just sincere enough and real enough. You got to be real with it, real with yourself. Not some half at it type of desire, but it's super sincere. It doesn't mean we have no other desires but this ever. That's yes, we do desire to eat. We still hanker for things of the world, and that's okay. That's okay. God hears our intention, and God hears where we're at. And He knows where we're at in our life. And verily, we don't give up all of our attachments and desires for this world right away. No, it takes time. It does, and it's a natural progression as you progress upon the path. Mother Atasha likened it to the lessening of a lower taste in exchange for a higher taste. And it happens naturally, and we talked about just now that the more you progress upon the path, the more you become cleansed, more purified, the more your natural spiritual self comes out. Well, as you do so, you'll see in time, if you stay fixed on the path, keep your practice daily, follow, God's commandments and scriptural injunctions, really transform your life. You'll notice that over time, we will be less attached to desires of this world and more attached to devotional service, to spiritual life. And I know I've used this example of myself a lot. Go ahead.
I kind of got a little bit of a question here.
Okay, sure.
It's related to spiritual.
Is it related to Meet's question?
Yeah, it is. So when you say follow the scripture, when I read these different types of books, some of them kind of have their own different, like ideologies and, and everything like that. And they don't quite really like align. So like, what scripture am I supposed to be reading?
Okay.
Some of them kind of contradict each other.
Okay. I'll get to that. Yes, that's a good question. Very good question. In fact, actually, we covered that a few classes back, funny enough. There's a part of the Religion of the book that actually mentions the same thing. But first, with Meet's question, we don't start off right away fully renounced from this world. And oftentimes, out of great passion and zeal, when we first take to the path, we sometimes bite off a little more than we can chew, because we look at the, what's the word? The standard we're looking at. We're looking at the lives of the great saints. We're looking at the lives of these holy masters and acharyas and representatives of the Lord. and we look at how they live and we think, okay, I have to be like that. Okay, so what we often make the mistake in the beginning of spiritual life is we over-endeavor. We over-endeavor by falsely renouncing things that we weren't ready to do. And I'm very guilty of that. It's like a good example is when you go to the gym and you haven't gone to the gym in ages or never been to the gym. And what do? You want, I'm going to get swole, I'm going to get fit, I'm going to, trimmed out. And then you do like the workout of these people that have like been doing it forever and they're really strong and fit. And you go really hard, really fast. And what happens? You get so sore, you overdid it, you cause injury, you're too much. And I saw someone do this when we were in high school too. He was sore for weeks, and the poor guy, and he's like, I'm never working out again. So we tend to over-endeavor. And in spiritual life too, in young devotees, and I did the same thing. I was like, okay, association is important. I need to mind my association. Everything has an effect. So I won't do anything that's not spiritual. I'm not going to watch any movies that's not spiritual. I'm not going to watch or listen to any music that's not spiritual. I'm not going to do this. Oh my gosh, that didn't last long. And this movie came out. I was like, I really want to see that new movie. Oh my God. Okay. Oh, no, I'm not going to. No, it's not spiritual. It's not spiritual. Well, so that was a false renunciation on my part. I still desired these things. I still had, a hankering, an attraction for these things. But by trying to force myself not to enjoy these things, I was just eating myself up inside. And we're not meant to take on any form of renunciation we're not ready for. Of course, if one accepts a spiritual master and you take on certain vows, then yeah, you keep those vows. You don't break those, of course. But everything else, of course, that's not to do with your vows. Like gaming, like dancing, in the desert at a rave or something. These kind of things that you wouldn't really constitute part of spiritual life, right? It's okay. Honestly, be easy with ourselves. It's okay to enjoy the things that we like, that we're into, as long as we stick to our practice, keep God as our number one goal in life, and keep following, the rules and regulations that we are instructed by our, spiritual master, by the scriptures, by the acharyas. We try our best. We do our best. God takes care of the rest. And in time, those other desires, they'll fall away, naturally. Just like, the easy example, when you're a kid, you used to play with certain toys, and as you got older, you ain't into those toys anymore. Those are kiddie stuff. I don't play with those anymore. I play these things now. So it's the same thing. It's not like those things you were used to be into. You had to at one point in your life say, I renounce these things. I'm not going to play with these anymore. That's not me anymore. No, it just, you naturally grew out of it. And that's what happens in spiritual life. If you stay on the path, you'll naturally grow out of these things. And it won't be like you're losing out, you're missing out. Because, if on the really beginning we force ourselves not to, we really feel like we're missing out. And then we eat ourselves up, this sucks. And we're not happy, we're not enjoying life, right? And we burn ourselves out. Burnout. Same as in every sphere of life, spiritual life's the same thing. We can burn ourselves out with over-endeavor. Anywho, so false renunciation, we got to be very careful of. It's like, I know there's certain spiritual or holy or religious groups like priests, they're not allowed to get married in certain groups, let's say Catholic priests, for example. And certain men, they take the vow of celibacy, yet they still have the desire for sex and family and things like that, right? They weren't ready for such a renunciation. They were not qualified to take that vow. They weren't ready for it. And what happens is, we've seen in life, in the world, in history, is that, that desire is repressed so much that eventually it comes out in very perverted ways. They get consumed with guilt and shame. Oh, I shouldn't want these things. I shouldn't desire these things, right?
Right.
And it twists them up inside. And then I did that the same thing to myself on a lesser scale. Like, oh, I shouldn't go and watch that new anime. I shouldn't do it. I was, and that was foolishness on my part. So the balance is you keep your sadhana, your spiritual practice and your vows, and you don't give those up. You keep those with you always. And in time, everything else in life will just little by little trickle away as you start getting so much love and joy from all the spiritual activities. Because in the beginning, all these spiritual practices, they're just a cleansing, a clearing. It's a grind. You're grinding away, like peeling an onion one layer at a time. Sometimes there's tears, it's the holy grind, right? But eventually there comes a time when you start shifting from material energy and start operating on the spiritual energy, and you start relishing that joy, that bliss from within. That's that spiritual happiness, that inner peace that cannot be duplicated or imitated. It's something that comes from realization, something that you genuinely experience in your heart. And it comes over time as you start to experience your natural state of spiritual consciousness. You start to relish more these practices. They become a source of actual joy and bliss and love. And it takes time. It's a balance, right? So the balance is you don't give up you don't give up everything that you're into, that you enjoy right away. It'll eventually fall off the wayside, and that's not a bad thing, because it's not a bad thing when everything else you take up is bringing you so much joy. It's a better thing. It's easy to walk away from something when it's not so great, and pick up something that's greater, because you have genuine experience. Like, oh, I really just want to do this more. I don't care for that anymore. This is awesome. And that's how it is. And that's how the organic process of spiritual life happens. So that's the balance. And regarding our young brother's question, if you're still here. So, yes, Mother Tasha's disciples were of many different religions, Muslim backgrounds, Hindu backgrounds, Christian backgrounds, Buddhist backgrounds, no backgrounds at all. Like myself, I had no background. And they would ask, well, everything's different, like what we're supposed to eat, how we're supposed to, pray, when we're supposed to pray, and what manner. It's all different, right? So these are the types of differeces that we find on the surface.
I think you meant textual differences, because like you have the Bible, and for example in Matthew 24:11 it says and many false prophets shall arise and shall deceive many. So how do you reconcile with something like that?
Oh, sorry, I got a little distracted. Something happened. How do you reconcile? My apologies. I saw something in Discord. I saw someone writing a question. Would you say that again, brother?
So I think your gesture was talking about how you have textual differences. For example, you have the Bible, right? And then you go to Matthew 24:11. It says, and many false prophets shall rise and shall deceive many. And then you have the Prophet Muhammad that comes 600 years later. How would you reconcile with something such as this?
I don't understand the question.
Because, you have the Bible saying many false prophets shall rise, right? There's plenty. It's littered throughout the Bible, and then you have later texts that come after it with prophets, right?
Does it say there will never be a prophet ever again?
Well, no, but it says many false prophets will come, so how do you decipher?
There will be signs. There will be signs manifest. Sure.
Well, yeah, but what would be a sign?
Well, for one, they are the living example of God's message through and through. All of their words, all of their acts, everything about them is in the loving service of God. And as they live in complete harmony and accord with God's revealed scriptures. You mentioned Prophet Muhammad. Well,
Yeah.
in the Quran, many of the same teachings that are in the Old Testament, the New Testament, are in the Quran. It's basically a continuation. After all, it was God's Archangel Gabriel, who we read about in the Old Testament, in the New Testament, who enlightened Muhammad with the Word of God.
Gabriel, not Michael.
What's that?
Did you say Michael?
Gabriel.
Oh yeah, Gabriel. There you go.
Yeah. So again, disciplic succession. Muhammad didn't just have a vision on his own. He didn't just eat mushrooms and come down and say, "Yo, I got an epiphany." No, he was actually visited by God's servant, Archangel Gabriel. And
Yeah, but I mean, for example, how can you decipher such as? Because I mean, like I said, if anyone, it's actually, I think it's in Corinthians. It says, if anyone shall preach a Bible, an angel in heaven or a prophet shall preach something than what we preach to you today, then they shall be under God's curse. So if you put that side by side with the Quran and you see the differences, what would you deduct in your personal opinion from that?
well, I don't dabble in opinions, especially my own. You don't want to know my opinions. They're of no use to anybody, let alone myself.
Well, then how would you harmonize those two teachings?
Oh,
You have one
there's
saying that
there's no conflict.
everything else is. I mean, I would say there is.
There's no conflict whatsoever, because what is the goal? The goal of Islam is to know God and to try to love Him. What is the goal of Christianity? What is the goal of Judaism? To know God and to lovingly serve Him. That's the goal. And the teachings, the core message, is non-different. In fact, when some of the early followers of Muhammad, fled the land in persecution and went to Abyssinia, modern-day Ethiopia, and they beseeched the king there, who was a Christian king, for protection. And when he asked them, tell me about our Savior, Jesus Christ, how was He born? And they said eloquently, as they heard from the Prophet Muhammad, as Prophet heard from the angel, the whole recounting of the birth of Jesus, and what they believe in, that all men are equal, and that we're not meant to kill one another, harm one another. We're meant to be tolerant, loving, serve one another. All these wonderful moral codes that the king was taken aback. He's like, you guys are just like us. The differences between them is no greater than this line I'm drawing in the ground. It's nothing. There's nothing. There's really nothing between us so much. We're like brothers.
I mean, I would say it's way bigger because, I mean, you have Ethiopia at the time that you're speaking of, and it's a Christian empire, right? And they believe that Jesus is God, right? They believe in the Trinity. And then you have Muslims that believe that the Trinity is idolatry, or it's not fully the true doctrine of God. They think it's polytheism.
Well,
So I'd say the line is like pretty vast.
Sure, that's an opinion.
Well, no, it's a fact.
Well, let's go back to desire. What was the desire of Prophet Muhammad? What was the desire?
Depends on who you ask.
What was the desire of Jesus? Was to bring the faithful back to God, to share the message of the one God, to show others how to live a holy, righteous life, to purify themselves, to cleanse their own hearts and minds. This was the desire of all of God's prophets and messengers and spiritual masters in disciplic succession. Their desires are completely aligned with God's desire. And that
Not
one
really,
mission,
Not on everything.
was that?
I said not really, not on everything.
Well, there's an outer teaching and an inner teaching to all the revealed scriptures. And the outer teaching, which is what's given according to language, custom, culture, time, and place, specifically to a certain people, to relate with those certain people. And that's different. That's the differences on the surface. But they're temporary. Those are not meant for all time. Those are for that time. And then there's the inner teaching in all of the revealed scriptures. The inner message, which is one, which is the same in all God's scriptures. And the same one message of love of God you find in the core throughout all time. It is for all time, for all people. And those who are wise can see the difference. What is the outer teaching? What is the inner teaching? And the outer teachings that we see all the differences and people make a big contention about it, they're just on the surface. They're fighting on the surface. Religion to them is on their tongue, but not in their heart. Because if they
I feel like you're focusing too much on like the central teaching of both, which is, I mean, it's all of all religions, bringing people closer to God.
I'll take that as a
But I think
compliment.
you have to also view at like the contrast between one another. I mean, there's vast differences between both texts, right? You have the Quran, and it teaches Tawheed, which is monotheism, and then it deems other religions such as Christianity as polytheism. When you actually look
No,
at
it doesn't.
at both, it does. It actually does. It says that Christians are idolaters that believe in three gods.
Is it saying Christ was an idolater?
No, but that doesn't really matter if it says
Is
declare him as a prophet when Jesus.
That is because, and I got the clear answer for that, it's actually a quote from the Religion of Love book. No prophet of God negates any religion given by God, only the abuses of it.
Not really, because you have texts like the Quran saying that the Bible is corrupt. When Muhammad had the Bible, they deem it as corrupt. It's been corrupted throughout time, so they're restoring the message of the Bible, which is monotheism in their opinion. But there's no proof of that. There's no textual proof of the Bible ever being corrupt when Muhammad had it in his possession. If you ask a Muslim today, they'll say that the Bible is corrupt, even during his time and before that.
Well, we're not going by the hearsays and opinions of others. We're just...
Even the Quran states it itself, if you'd like to...
Quran never said that.
Quran did say that.
No, I read Quran completely. Quran never said that.
Well, let me ask you a question, brother.
Go ahead.
What is your desire?
My desire?
Yes. What is your heart's desire?
Oh, to serve God.
Okay. You want to serve God.
Right.
All right. That's a very good desire. How strong is that desire?
Pretty strong.
Great. I encourage you to build that desire. Now, would it be very good service to keep arguing and bickering and quarreling over this religion, that, that? Or would it be more useful, more practical, to instead of looking what other people are doing, but instead surrender yourself to spiritual practices, to a life of devotion, you purify your heart and you be the living message of God to please God. Would that not be more worthwhile?
I think, even doing what I'm doing, I think having conversations about such differences, I think that would bring people closer to God as well. You have people that have contentions with their own scriptures. Like, for example, you have people that doubt the Quran, you have people that doubt the Bible. And I think conversations like this would alleviate their confusion around both texts.
I'm not really confused about the text.
Because you harmonize in an unorthodox way from any perspective.
No, it's because I've been practicing as I've been instructed. And I'm coming to realize the truth for myself. And that's what we're supposed to do. We're not supposed to bicker and argue on the second-hand knowledge. We're supposed to practice and experience that knowledge for ourselves. And the goal isn't to win an argument. The goal isn't to be right. Who cares? We're not out to win debates. We're not out to change people's minds, open people's minds. What did Jesus say to Judas Iscariot? Open your heart, not your mind. Open your heart. How do we open our hearts? By actually...
How could somebody's heart be open if their brain is closed? If they're just swallowed by all these doubts and this trauma within like the religious text? Like, for example, someone that grows up in like a strict religious household, don't you think that it would have like consequences upon their upbringing due to trauma?
Oh, everything.
Their own religion and being enforced in it?
Everything has an effect, yes.
Yeah, so I think that these conversations are well needed, wouldn't you say?
Depends on the sincerity and the desire of those in that conversation. And to have true transference of knowledge, and we've discussed this before, I mean, if your goal is to actually learn, and not learn for the sake of knowing, but to acquire knowledge so that you can transform your life, open your heart, come again to love. Oh, don't worry, the battery's fine. That was a different notification, don't worry. Yeah, it's still plugged in. Sometimes the battery will die on us and class is over. If your goal is to actually radically transform your life and to experience love of God, what's better? To know about love or to experience love? And to truly benefit from such spiritual discourses, truly benefit, and this is not my opinion, this is actually as is taught in the scriptures, to truly benefit, you need the qualified speaker and the qualified hearers. The speaker and the hearers all need to be qualified. The one speaking needs to be an authority who's living out, practicing, and speaking only as they were instructed, as the scriptures taught, not with any change or alteration, an actual authority who lives the message. And the hearers must be qualified in that they're hearing submissively in a mood of love and service. Not a mood of, I'm right, you're wrong, I want to win the debate. We're right, you're wrong, this is the only way. There will be no transference of transcendental knowledge in this type of mood. So if the hearers, the ones inquiring knowledge, are hearing submissively from the proper authority, who themselves is a submissive servant to God and a servant to all, then the magic happens. Then knowledge is transferred, and it's beyond the mind. It's beyond the mind, it's with the heart. And there are plenty of places, plenty of forums, where people will debate and argue and discuss, but very few of them actually practice or even have any realization or even surrender to any authority. They don't surrender fully to God. They don't surrender to the message or surrender to a bona fide teacher. Mostly they think that I want to be the top dog. I want to be the Lord of material nature. They surrender to no one but their own self. They see themselves as authority. And this pride, the heart filled with pride, can hold nothing more. So just to have open discourses and discuss it, and nothing actually comes of it. And you'll see nothing actually changes with these people. They go on to keep doing the same arguing for years, all their lives, and never actually change. Because it's not with the ears or the mind is the message of God heard. It's heard with the heart. And how to open the heart, that's what these spiritual practices for. That's what that surrender, that's what that crying to God alone for knowledge of the absolute truth. Not wanting nothing greater than this. I can't live without this. That's the desire. Hope. And we're just about out of time. I should close the class for the recording real fast. All glories to Mother Atasha, all glories to Religion of Love, all glories to the assembled devotees.